Hi, and welcome to the Heffy Doodle YouTube channel. My name is Lauren, and I'm so excited to be sharing how I created this amazing little box card with such an adorable pond scene. Now, before I started recording, I did already stamp, color, and do all of my die cutting. So I'm just going to walk through each of the different die sets and stamp sets that I used for today. So I die cut all of my pieces out from the Brooke 3D box card die set. Now I did use a ton of different colored cardstock, and I will have everything linked down in the description below. I also used a cloud border die and some grass border dies, and those are from the Rolling Hills landscape dies, Grassy last border dies, and freshly cut grass dies. I also die cut a small tree from the Forest Builder dies, and I have a cute little rabbit from Honey Bunny Boo. I also have two storks from the brand new special delivery set. I have some squirrels and birds from Nuts About You, a sun and a duck from Quack Me Up, and then lots and lots of images from the Bee Hoppy stamp set. So again, everything will be listed down below, but just a quick run through of all the products that I used for today's card. So next I'm going to be doing some stenciling. I'm using a low tack mat to help keep my teal cardstock in place, and I'm going to layer over the new Ripple Waves stencil from Heffy Doodle, and just using my magnets to help keep all of that in place. And I'm going to ink on some Uncharted Mariner in a distress ink, and I'm just going to lightly add some of that blue onto that teal cardstock so I can create a nice water effect with that Ripple Waves stencil. Once I'm all done ink blending, I'm going to add some ink to my glass mat here and some water, and I'm going to grab a brush and we're going to do some splatter. I'm doing tons of splattering on the card today. So I'm starting with that Uncharted Mariner, and then I took off the stencil and I'm splattering on some picket fence white ink, and here's what it looks like while the ink is still wet, but it will dry back as the ink dries on that cardstock. I'm going to also add a lot of splatter onto some other parts of my scene. I'm going to bring all of the rest of my pieces out that I'm going to be doing splattering on, except for my clouds. I will just grab my Wink of Stella in a clear, it's clear, color clear, and I'm just going to go around all of my little clouds here and add a nice sheen shimmer to them. It's a little hard to see here on camera, but it's just a nice little subtle sparkle for those clouds. Next, I'm going to take my green cardstocks and I'm going to do more splattering with different distress ink colors in green. I have Twisted Citron, Mowed Lawn, Lucky Clover, and Pine Needles, and I'm just going to squish that ink right onto my glass board here and then grab my water sprayer, and I'm going to add water to those little ink blobs on my mat, and then again gonna grab a clean brush and splatter this green ink all over my green pieces of cardstock. So for the two lighter colors, I'm going to go a little heavier on my light green cardstock because I think that will show up the most. And then for the two darker shades of green, the more blue-green color, I'm going to make sure those show up more on my darker green pieces. So just going in between all the colors and flicking on that splatter. I added a lot to my largest dark green grass, but most of that's going to be covered. I just didn't think about it at the time. I was just trying to get nice splatter on all of those pieces of cardstock. And I'm also going to grab that picket fence ink out again and add some white splatter to them as well. I like the contrast of the dark and light splatter on all of my pieces, so it's just going to really create some fun texture on these pieces of cardstock without any major ink blending. So here's what the lighter green looks like with all that splatter. Again, it looks a lot darker now, but it will dry back quite a bit as the ink dries. And here is the dark green. So I'll set all those papers aside, clean up again, and then the last thing I'm going to splatter is my sky background. And for this, I'm going to use Salty Ocean and Broken China Distress inks. Again, just squishing that ink onto my glass surface, adding some water, grabbing a clean brush, and then splattering on that ink to that blue cardstock. Now this is a bit bright, but I think it looks really nice, and again I'll add some white splatter, so going to grab that picket fence, add some water, a clean brush, and splatter that on as well. Some of this will get covered with my grassy backgrounds, and I'm going to add my tree and a sun, so it will get covered a little bit, but I just love having all of this fun texture from the splatter on my cardstock pieces. So now that everything is off drying, it's time to start assembling the card. So I'm going to start with my dark blue card base pieces. I have my larger piece that will be the background, these triangle shaped pieces that will be the sides, and then I have the front piece that will be the front of the card that will help keep this box card all closed and create a box. I'm using a scoring tool just to help reinforce those score lines. I kind of bend it towards me, so bending it the same as the impression of the fold, and then I bend it the other way. So it kind of just gets it a little started, and then I bend it back and then use my bone folder to really press in and make that a nice score line. So I'm going to do that again for the two triangle pieces and then both sides of that front dark blue piece. And then I die cut two what I call shelf pieces for the box card, and did that stenciling on to create the pond look for inside of my box. Now I'm going to grab some double-sided adhesive tape. This is 1/4 of an inch wide, and I'm going to apply it to all of the tabs of all of these different pieces. The 1/4 of an inch wide tape is perfect for gluing all these pieces together. So I'm adding it to the tab. I have a clear block with a straight edge that I'm just using to help tear the tape, and again putting it on all of the tabs. So I have them on the tabs of my two side triangle shaped pieces, my front piece, and then my two pond looking shelf pieces. And once I have all of those sides on, we can start assembling the box together. So first I'm going to add the two triangle piece sides, and I'm gluing them before I add in my background sky piece, so that way that background sky piece with the nice stitch details will help hide where I'm adhering these two side pieces. So I'm going to line that up to the same corner, so right up against the side and bottom edges of that background. And then I will repeat that process for the other side. I'm just using some tweezers to help me peel off the release paper because sometimes I have a little bit of a hard time getting it off with my shorter nails. So now that the two side pieces are on, we're going to start adhering all of the smaller pieces, so the front of the card and the two shelves, but we're just going to adhere them on one side. So the front shelf, or the front piece you could say, it has a slanted edge on one side and a straight edge on the other. So you want to make sure you line those up correctly so that the straight edge is the straight bottom part of the box. And then now I'm adding in my two shelves. I didn't really take any measurements on where I place these. I just knew I needed to kind of divide this section up into 3. So just placing these two pieces where I think they will look nice. There really is no rhyme or reason other than it has enough space for me to put on all of my little stamped images. So now before I close up the card, I want to add in my background. So I'm adding some adhesive to my blue sky die cut piece, and I didn't do any border cutting with this, so it has the nice stitch detail around all edges of this background. Next, I'm going to add my cloud background. So again, just adding adhesive to the back side, and then I will glue this on. Now my background does have a lot of layers, so you definitely don't need to do as many layers as I do, or you could trim them down so it's not so thick, but I really like how it all looks overall, and I'm glad that I did all these different layers. I think it just really adds a lot of fun to the card. So the next layer is my tall grass, which again is that darker green. And I know that I want to tuck my tree behind my tall grass, so I'm going to get my little glue bird out, and I'm going to add some adhesive to the back side of my tree stump and branches. And I'm going to glue that on top of my green tree. I love seeing the branches. I think it just really makes the tree look so cute. And then I'll add more glue to the backside of the tree completely, and then I'm going to tuck that in behind my tall grass off to the side. I think it adds a lot of perception in the card, so that tree looks kind of further away, and the clouds are even further than that. And now I'm going to add in the last layer of my background, which is my lighter green hill. I think this is going to look so pretty, and I think honestly it looks really nice even without all the critters yet. It just looks like a nice little nature scene. So now that my background is in, we can close up the box. So I'm peeling off the release paper off the rest of those tabs, and then I'm going to fold over and close my box up. I'm going to make sure that my front piece is lined up first, and then I will add pressure and make sure all of those pieces are attached. And I'm going to go back and forth and again make sure that I have good adhesion on both sides of my box card. And here's how it's looking so far, but I have more details that I want to add to the front of the card. So I have another grassy piece that I cut. For the front side of it, I want it to look like there's a little pond or river in between the two sides of the grass. And then before I glue on this last die cut piece of this light green cardstock, I'm going to add in the sides. So I have some pond sides that I made, again with that stenciling, the same as my two little shelves that I have on the inside of my box card. And I'm gluing these to the sides. I definitely could have added some more fun to these. I could have added more grass or maybe some more critters, but I'm going to focus all of my critters on the inside of the box. So now I'm going to stamp a sentiment. I'm going to grab one of my favorite sentiments from the special delivery stamp set that says, "Here's a paper hug just for you." I just think it's such a sweet sentiment for a card. I grabbed my Misty and I have that clear mat all nice and clean, and I'm using it just to help keep my sentiment paper in place. I'm going to add my sentiment centered onto that rectangle and then use my Misty to make sure it's nice and straight, and I will stamp it down using some dark green ink. This is called Rainforest and it's a VersaFine Clear ink, which is my go-to inks for sentiments. So now that sentiment is on there, it's centered, it looks great, and it blends in nicely since it's also green. I'm going to glue that to the front of my box card. Just using a tape runner for these pieces, and it will fit nicely along the sides and bottom edge of that grass. So I have that same look on both sides of my pond. I have the dark green with the light green layered, and then that pond is in between. I love that you can cut these shelf pieces inside the box out of some different paper and make a whole entire scene, including what all the critters are going to sit on inside of the box. Now it's time for the decorating, which is my favorite part. I'm going to glue my little frog that's sitting onto the large lily pad, and then I also have a flower that I will glue to the center of the smaller lily pad. I am going to now just kind of figure out approximately where all of my images are going to go. I already know that I want the sun to be in the top left-hand corner since I have the tree on the right. So I went ahead and just glued that right down. And now I'm going to play around and kind of figure out where I think all of my images can go. I end up not using that larger stork. There's just not enough room, and I liked all of the other smaller critters more, so that stork's just going to go back in with my stamp set for a future project. So you can see here I have everything kind of figured out where I want it to go, but this box is moving a lot and I'm going to accidentally knock them all over in just a minute. But I have an idea of how I want everything to be placed. There you go. There was my sad hands on the card. So I'm just going to start gluing it down. So I'm starting with that wood piece in the back, and then I know that where my stork is going to stand on that wood log, and I want my little bird standing on the rocks on the land to be just a little bit to the left. That way my stork will not completely block my little bird that's going to be sitting on these rocks along the shore. So I'm gluing everything down with just adhesive. I don't have any foam adhesive on this project. I did layer quite a few pieces together to make my background, and the card will have a little bit of dimension because of the way that the box card is designed, but I did not add any foam adhesive. Now that's not to say that you couldn't add foam adhesive, you absolutely can. Just remember that the more you add to the card, the more that you'll need to add some postage onto your cards if you're mailing them. So I have my stork kind of standing on the wood log. It's a little off to the side, but we'll just pretend that he's, standing on the log and he's just checking out what the frog is trying to do. He's trying to jump up and get this little fly that I'm going to glue on. So I'm gluing my frog that's jumping to the left, so that way it looks like he's kind of jumping out of the water. And then I have this lily pad with a flower, which is just so cute, and I'm going to put that on the same shelf as well as the stork and the frog. So there I have my next layer down. I have what's in my background, I have what's on the back shelf, and then I'm going to actually skip the second shelf and start building onto the front. I have these cute little cattails. I kind of wish I would have stamped more of them. I think I could have added more to the card. Not that it's, busy enough, but they are just so fun and I love how much they add to this pond scene. So I put the larger bush of cattails on the right and I'm going to have one critter on that side. And then I did the smaller one on the left and I'm going to have two critters on that side. So my little bunny will be here on the right as it's facing towards the left. And then the squirrel and my other bird, because they're facing the right, will be on the left side. I try to make sure that when I add in critters that are facing a certain way, that they are on the sides of the card so it doesn't look like they're looking off at something past the card. Now I will break that rule a bit for my yellow duck, but that's just because of how I place my other frog on the next shelf behind my front here. But it's okay. It still looks really cute and it's not completely off to the side. So I was going to put my frog on the left, but I didn't like the two frogs next to each other. So I changed my mind and I'm going to put the frog more towards the right. And that way it just kind of breaks up those two frogs without being too close to each other and breaks up the color a little more. And then I'm going to glue that cute little duckling to the left of the frog. And I'm trying not to cover the lily pad completely. So there are all of my sweet little images glued on, but now I need to figure out how I want to glue down this fly. I did think about trying to pop it up. I thought about gluing it to the lily, but I end up just trimming down a piece of scrap acetate and I'm going to use that to attach the fly to my card. So I'm trimming this down to be about 1 centimeter. I just thought it was a good width behind the loop-de-loop of my little fly's flight path. So I'm going to use my wet glue to glue this down to the acetate. I'm going to use my tweezers to hold it because I get really messy gluey fingers from doing this. I tap the glue so it doesn't completely, seep out the from behind my image. And once it's dry, I'm just going to trim around so that way my acetate kind of follows the edge of my flight path so it doesn't stick out past my stamped image. To attach it to the shelf, I'm going to glue it behind that back pond shelf. So I'm going to trim it down and then I'm going to add in some of that double-sided adhesive again. I'm just going to add a little strip to the bottom and then I'm going to kind of figure out where it's going to fit best. I didn't end up trimming it enough, so I will need to pull it off and just trim a little bit more. Here you can see me trimming it down, and then I will adhere it again to the back side of that shelf. So now it looks like it's flying because of that acetate. It's not super noticeable, so it looks really cute and gives it a more 3D effect. So here is a final look at this box card with all of these fun critters and images, mixing die cuts and stamped images. And while I didn't do any ink blending, there is a lot of splatter and ink on this card to really just add more to the texture and overall images of this card. Now what's great about this box card is that it does fit into an A2 size envelope. You can see here, as long as you don't add too much, hanging out the sides of your box card or too high above the background, it will fit perfectly. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that you use the new box card to build some really adorable scenes too. Again, I have everything that I use down below in the description. Thank you so much to Heffy Doodle for having me a part of their YouTube team. And again, you can find lots of inspiration and more from Heffy Doodle with their social media links down below. Bye!